The sinking of the Titanic, a cataclysmic event of such magnanimous proportions that it seared into the very psyche of our species. Even today, a century after it plunged into the icy depths of the North Atlantic, the story of this supposedly unsinkable vessel is no obscure trivia. It's a narrative that's been retold time and again. But we're here to shatter that polished surface of popular lore and dive deeper. Let's unravel some stunning facts about the Titanic that often get buried beneath its grand legend. First off, remember that the Titanic was no regular ship. It was an opulent oasis of the seas, a playground for the crème de la crème. The ultra-wealthy jostled to have their names etched onto its maiden voyage's passenger list. One such illustrious name was John Jacob Astor IV, an American tycoon, a man so loaded that his pockets practically bulged with dollar bills, boasting a staggering net worth of $87 million at the time of his demise, equivalent to a cool $2.3 billion today. He was possibly the wealthiest man alive. Astor wasn't just rich. He was a man of many talents. A decorated military veteran, he penned the pages of a popular science fiction novel, A Journey in Other Worlds, and like his forebears, raked in millions through real estate. In 1897, he birthed the Astoria Hotel, an edifice so magnificent it was hailed as the globe's most luxurious hotel. This New York City landmark, built adjacent to the Waldorf Hotel, property of Astor's cousin and rival, William, morphed into the world-renowned Waldorf Astoria, an icon even after a century. But wealth and fame didn't secure Astor a happy ending. He succumbed to the depths alongside his loyal canine, Kitty, leaving behind his pregnant wife, who, along with their unborn child, survived and inherited his colossal fortune. The tale doesn't end here. In the web of Titanic's intricate narrative is woven the extraordinary life of Violet Jessop. Whether you deem her the luckiest or the unluckiest woman in the world, her story is nothing short of remarkable. This British nurse, who spent her formative years in Argentina, was just 24 when she stepped aboard the Titanic. The ship's collision with the iceberg rudely disrupted her sleep, propelling her on deck, where she watched the heart-wrenching scenes of women bidding their husbands farewell before being ushered onto lifeboats with their children. 8 hours later, she was among the handful of passengers rescued by the Carpathia. Fast forward 4 years, and she was aboard the Britannic, Titanic's sister ship, when it suffered an unexplained explosion and sank in the Aegean Sea. Despite the rapid 55-minute sinking, Jessop survived yet again. The saga of her maritime misfortunes didn't end there. She was also aboard the RMS Olympic, the eldest of the 3 sister ships, when it had a run-in with a British warship, the HMS Hawke. All 3 ships thought invincible, yet all 3 tainted by disaster, and Jessop there for each calamity. Fast forward a few decades, and James Cameron, a sci-fi filmmaker with ambitions larger than the ocean itself, decided to immortalize the Titanic's tale. The year was 1997, and the result was a cinematic spectacle that shattered all box office records. It raked in a staggering $1.8 billion worldwide, skyrocketing to the pinnacle of popularity. But creating this historic blockbuster wasn't easy, or cheap. With a price tag of $200 million, it was a risky venture, but it paid off massively. In today's terms, that's akin to throwing $360 million into the cinematic waters. Cameron's Titanic was a gamble that certainly hit the jackpot. But the saga of extravagance doesn't stop there. Here's a twist that will blow your mind: the silver screen portrayal of Titanic, directed by Cameron, cost more to create than the original ship. The very ship that was a wonder of Edwardian engineering was constructed with a budget of $7.5 million back in 1912. Inflated to present-day value, that's approximately $190 million, still falling a cool 10 mil short of Cameron's cinematic endeavor. Yet, unlike the ship, Cameron's Titanic floated triumphantly, reaping an ocean of profits. Despite being the largest ship of its time, The Titanic's final resting place remained a mystery for a startling 73 years. This colossal leviathan, now shattered and silent, evaded countless rescue operations. Its whereabouts remained an enigma, eluding the grasp of the public and authorities alike, until it was inadvertently discovered in 1985. This surprising twist. The discovery wasn't a planned expedition, but a byproduct of a covert Cold War mission by the U.S. Navy. Their objective was to investigate two sunken nuclear submarines, but they stumbled upon the lost liner in the process. On September 1, 1985, a Franco-American expedition, spearheaded by renowned oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard, pinpointed the Titanic more than 2 miles beneath the ocean's surface. The tool for this landmark discovery was an unmanned submersible named Argo. A covert Cold War operation had inadvertently gifted humanity with an unforgettable chapter of marine archaeology and propelled ocean exploration into uncharted territories. While the sinking of the Titanic has been long etched in history as a catastrophic event, the actual statistics of the disaster are even more heart-wrenching. The death toll was staggering, with over 1,500 lives extinguished while a mere 705 souls survived. Researcher Chuck Anese delved into the demographics of survival, unveiling a grim picture of gender bias and class disparities. Of the first-class passengers, 97% of the 144 women were saved compared to a mere 32% of the 175 men. The most brutal survival rate was among male second-class passengers, with only 14 of 168 surviving. The odds of survival for women and men were 74% and 20% respectively. The sorrowful saga continues with the tragedy of beloved pets on board. Despite being released as the ship started its fateful plunge, only 2 animals made it. One passenger, Anne Elizabeth Isham, allegedly met her tragic end, refusing to abandon her Great Dane. A woman, with arms frozen around a dog, was reportedly sighted in the water, leading many to believe that Isham chose to face death with her beloved companion. She was one of only 4 first-class women who didn't survive the ordeal. The narrative arc of the Titanic also embraces the remarkable story of Millvina Dean. A British civil servant and cartographer, Dean was the last survivor of the Titanic. At 2 months old, she was also the youngest passenger aboard. Her family had their eyes on the American dream, planning to open a tobacco shop in Kansas. Their journey was intended on a different ship, but a coal strike led to their fateful transfer to the Titanic. On the fateful night of April 14, 1912, her father felt the shudder of the iceberg collision. He investigated the disturbance, returning to urge his wife to dress the children and head on deck. Dean, her mother, and siblings survived the catastrophe, while her father was lost to the icy depths. Upon reaching the shore, Dean became an instant celebrity as the Titanic baby, swarmed by reporters eager to capture the infant survivor's image. She lived to almost a century, passing away in her English senior home. In a poignant end to her Titanic connection, her final years were financially supported by Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet, and James Cameron. Following her death, her ashes were returned to the sea from the very docks in Southampton, where the Titanic had embarked on its doomed voyage. No doubt about it, the Titanic was a colossal paradox of luxury and disaster, a ship that boasted numbers as staggering as the icebergs that brought it down. Just to illustrate the grandeur of Titanic, consider these mind-boggling facts. The ship stretched 883 feet in length, guzzled 825 tons of coal daily, and illuminated its interiors with over 10,000 light bulbs. While most people recall the tragic loss of life during the sinking, it's often forgotten that the construction process was also fatal for 2 workers. The Titanic's anchor was a massive entity in itself, requiring the strength of 20 horses for its transportation. The ship had a maximum passenger capacity of 3,500, yet during its fateful journey, it held approximately 2,300 souls on board, including 13 couples embarking on their honeymoon voyage. Each lifeboat aboard the Titanic could accommodate 65 passengers, Yet the first one launched carried only 28. The vessel was designed to hold 65 lifeboats, but in a fatal miscalculation, only 20 were present on board. The ship was a floating gourmet paradise, boasting 1,000 bottles of wine, 40,000 fresh eggs, and an astonishing daily consumption of 14,000 gallons of drinking water. In a chilling twist of fate, the Titanic ignored 6 iceberg warnings before its fatal encounter with the massive icy behemoth. Only 31% of the passengers survived, but if the ship had been adequately equipped with lifeboats, that number could have been 53%. Today, the ghostly wreckage of the Titanic rests 12,600 feet beneath the sea level. At the time of its launch, the Titanic was the world's largest ship, dwarfing even the famous Lusitania of 1906 by over 100 feet. The Titanic and its 2 sister ships, the Britannic and the Olympic, required substantial modifications at their birthplace, the Belfast shipyard. To accommodate these gargantuan vessels, changes were also implemented across the Atlantic at the pier in New York City Harbor. But the Titanic and its sister ships did not hold the record of being the largest vessels for long. By 1934, the Queen Mary, stretching an impressive 19 feet, equivalent to 3 football fields end to end, claimed that title. It wasn't until the 1990s when another cruise ship exceeded the Queen Mary in length. However, the current largest ship, Royal Caribbean's Symphony of the Seas, makes the Titanic look almost modest in comparison. With 18 decks and 7 neighborhoods, it stretches a remarkable 1,188 feet, accommodating over 5,000 more people than the Titanic could. Among the many individuals associated with the Titanic, Frederick Fleet stands out for a sorrowful reason. He, along with his colleague Reginald Lee, was on lookout duty aboard the Titanic when the iceberg was spotted. It was Fleet who first sighted the iceberg and alerted the bridge. Despite their efforts, and owing to the lack of binoculars in the crow's nest and the unusually calm waters that night, the disaster was not averted. This inability to prevent the catastrophe weighed heavily on Fleet, who tragically took his own life in 1965. Even in the era of the Titanic, misinformation was rampant. As news of the ship's sinking spread, many news outlets, including the Daily Mail, the Belfast Telegraph, and the World, inaccurately reported that there were no casualties. This attempt to maintain public calm inadvertently gave false hope to the families of the passengers, leading to a cruel realization of their loved one's fate. Baltimore's Evening Sun, on April 15th, dedicated its entire first page to the disaster, falsely proclaiming that all Titanic passengers were safe. This trend of misinformation continued, with reports even denying the sinking of the ship altogether. Even a century ago, the specter of fake news loomed large.